are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. I apologize for my voice. We're going to try to get through it. We could not wait. This is an emergency live show, PATC, Peek Around the Corner, giving you the best peek around the corner in the business. Welcome, everybody. We are live. We cover everything in college in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button. If you like our content, share the video with your family and your friends. If you want to donate, support this show through a donation, hit the $ where you make a comment, and we'll get to you super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome, everybody. Everybody is welcome into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend with your comments in the chat room, with your phone calls later in the show. This is going to be a simple, formatted show. It's going to be one story in our monologue. Then we're going to open up the phone lines, and you are going to determine how long this live show goes, or if I pass out, one or the other. This is our second live show of the day. I got the go-ahead to break some news. You're not going to get everything you want out of this live show, but you're going to get everything you need. We're going to have to hold back on some information. We're going to have to be vague on some information. There are other people, other entities that are going to break the whole story when the timing is ripe and good and they have all the information. But we believe at this time on August 9th, the College Football's Peek Around the Corner can do a service for you, the college football fan. We are breaking some news. As you have been aware and been reading reports for months, conferences are going to be looking for new revenue streams to help out their schools in their conference. We got this new salary cap that's being created, up to $22 million for the first year. Maybe it's going to be a little bit higher. It's going to grow each and every year as the average FBS athletic department revenue expands every single year. If it does, hopefully it does. And conferences are going to be looking for new revenue streams. We can report tonight. It is way beyond. This is not speculation. This is not the speculation zone. This is not, this is well beyond that. This is not in theory. This is far beyond that. This is in the deep weeds of discussion among conferences in the FBS. And I'm not going to go any more in specific on what conferences. I will let you speculate on that with your comments, with your phone calls, discussions about doing what we, the college football sickos, have been talking about for years. What Jim Harbaugh talked about in the Big Ten, 7-8 years ago. The creation of a semifinal weekend at the end of the conference schedule. A flex weekend. Much like what the Big Ten planned to do at the end of the COVID season, but it didn't work out because so many teams had COVID. The whole plan collapsed. Conferences are in discussion, deep in discussions about creating a flex semifinal weekend that would create more revenue, create more value for their media partners in a couple different ways. Now, as we go into this, it gets even more interesting. Because if you're going to do this, and again, conferences are in not first stage discussions on this, not second stage discussions on this. This is not speculation, but this is in the deep weeds discussions. But if you're going to do this, there's really only one way to successfully do this. And we're going to get into that. And when you go into that rabbit hole, and we are going in that rabbit hole, then the discussions become even more interesting and fascinating. The key part of this is these conferences want to create more revenue for the schools. They want to, in doing so, they have to create more value for their media partners. And to do that, you need more and more of your conference games to mean more and more at the end of the season. And if you got that basically almost automatic, at least one of your champion is going to get into the expanded playoff. Now you can create more value by having a semifinal, for have there to be the conference race, not just for the top 2 spots, but for the top 4 spots. We're going to get into it because there's only one way to do it. And when I mention it, people are going to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Yes, we're going to go there. There's something else. And I'm going to talk very vague on this point. Again, other people, other entities, other companies, other reporters, they're going to be the ones that are going to be breaking the story. I'm just a fat guy from Minnesota. I only can push the envelope so far tonight, August 9th. There is also another revenue grabbing that conferences are looking to elevate their value to their media partners so they get more money. And that is to schedule football games, excuse my voice, conference football games on non-traditional college football days in the calendar. Now, we've seen a lot of that happening, right? We've been witnessing that in the last couple of years. We've been witnessing the NFL and the college football kind of pushing against each other, and NFL's been impeding on college football calendar, and maybe college football with the playoffs is starting to impede on the NFL football calendar. I got a feeling that college football calendar is going to push even more, have a longer bandwidth. They're going to be putting, there's going to be some conference games getting placed on the calendar that has not been done before. How wild that gets, I don't know. But there's parts of it that is, it's happening. It's going to happen. It's going to get reported on. It's going to bring in more revenue for conference or conferences. Some of that is, it's going to happen. There's other stuff that is getting maybe going to happen, maybe not, getting pushed. We'll see. I cannot give you the non-traditional days of the calendar that conferences are now looking, that they will put some of their conference games in. That's going to have to be reported by other people. But that's not the main, that's just the dessert or the salad for some of you. For me, it's the dessert of this story. The big story is the semifinal weekend, flex days, flex weekend. And this is not speculation. And it's further down the road. And conferences are in deep discussions. And I'm going to talk about it. We're really going to go deep in the rabbit hole because it signifies something else. Let me say thank you for everybody that has come in again at their second live show. I appreciate it. I know you all have a life. It's Friday night. I'm the last person you want to listen to. I'm the last person you want to look at. Thank you for coming on in. Ryan Thomas is in the house. Joaquin Morales, Richard L., John Bennett, Patrick Bear, Preston from Greensboro, Secret Agent, The Evil Badger, Jeff Olson, Gerald Jones, Mr. Hawkeye, Matt Higgins, Joe Z, Randy Taylor, Caleb Ramirez, Mark Bowman, thanks for coming on in, T-Duck, Expedition Greg, RT, Kerry Gold Nose, Dave B, Joe Z, Skaven, yes, the Red Raider, Laura Weiss, Cornelius Green, Bill G, Kent Woodworth, Moth Prof, CFB Plus, Mrs. Seminoles, Tracy FSU, Terry Kane, Larry the GM, Tumasta, Jeff Morgan, Steve-O, Chad Bracey, Nick Boardman, Jamie Thornton, Daniel Montcastle, Mr. Hoosier, Vox Quindaro, Dallas Marquez is in the house, Bruce Harris, Richard Brookins, Mr. Ed Wayner, thanks for coming on in. RT is in the house. Coos Corner is in the house. Dogs and Dubs is here. Kyle Visser is here. Immaculate Mr. Hawkeye is in the house. Muggy Wow. I'm hopefully I'm not missing anybody. Rob Ellen, Deadeye, Almighty Finn, Matt Neeson, Daniel Gorby, Kent Whitworth, Joyful Full One. Okay, now let's get into it. Thank you for everybody for joining us on a late Friday night. Remember this day, August 9th, 2024. Here's the deal. Matthew Farmer is in the house. And excuse me for my voice, but I'm fighting a cold and it ain't getting better. Number one, this is not speculation. This is not phase one. Not phase two. Deep, deep discussions. Beyond discussions. Conferences looking at creating more revenue and creating a semifinal weekend, flex weekend. This is where, now, do we here at Peek Around the Corner have all the details laid out in front of us? No. No, we have some that we can't get into today. But I don't have the details of how this is going to look. And conferences might do it differently. Right? They're going to have, these conferences are going to have more, there's more deregulation going on in college football. These conferences are going to have more freedom to choose the process on how they determine their conference champion. That deregulation has happened, and this is one of the aftermath of it. So how they do this flex weekend, these semifinal weekends, again, we're way beyond speculation. Hint, hint, wink, wink. So they may do it differently. So I'm just going to lay out a certain plan. And it may match exactly none of the conferences that decide to do this. It may match all of them. It may, I don't know, guys. I don't know. But I'm just going to lay out a plan. Because eventually, you're going to understand why I'm doing this. First of all, not everybody understands what a flex semifinal weekend is. So I'm going to explain it. But again, as I lay this out, it may not exactly match any of the conferences. Okay? But this is our baseline. This is our baseline. And trust me, hang with me here. T-Duck, Jeff Morgan, Kyle Visser, CFB Plus, Immaculate, Ryan Thomas, Gopher Insight, Sam James, Rod Nix. Stay with me. Because this is going to get real interesting. But you got to just stay with me for a moment. So let's lay it out. What could it look like? What could it look like for these conferences is you have a 12-game schedule. 3 non-conference games. 9 conference games. Again, what I'm laying out may not completely match exactly what's going to happen to any of the conferences. But I got to create a baseline because we're going somewhere with this. First, we're explaining what this would look like. And number 2, there's a reason why I'm doing this. Hang with me. 12 games. We're not adding a game. At least far as we know at Peek Around the Corner. As far as we know, this conference semifinal flex weekend does not add a game to the student athletes. 12 games. I'm going to take I'm going to use the SEC. I'm going to use the SEC comp. No, I'm not going to use any conference because people are going to say, Greg says the SEC. I'm not saying any forget it. I'm saying Larry the GM conference. Larry the GM conference. That's what we're going to use. I hope that's okay, Larry the GM. I'm using your name. Larry the GM conference has 16 teams. Each team has 12 games like they do now, 9 conference games, 3 out of conference games. At the end of the season, you're going to have played, after those 12 games, you're going to have played 7 home games, 5 road games, just like you do today. At the end of the year, so when you get your schedule from Larry the GM conference, and your team, you look at your schedule as a coach, as a student athlete, as a fan, you see your schedule for the first 8 games of your conference schedule. You know who you're going to play, what day you're going to play them, and there's an 8-game schedule. You also have your 3 out of conference games. The 9th conference game, the 9th one, it is on your schedule when you look at it as a fan, as a student athlete, as a coach. You know where you're playing. No, you don't. But you know if it's a home game or a road game for that 9th game on your schedule. But you don't know who you're playing. If you are one of the top 4 teams, you play in the semifinals. If you finish 5th, you most likely play the 6th team. If you're finished 7th, you most likely play the 8th. Most likely. If you played them already during the season, they'll probably switch it up. And those are the games that get played on the 9th conference game, the last weekend of the season. Does everybody follow me on that? No, it would be the 12th. We're not adding a game. We're not adding a game. It's your 9th conference game. Your rivalry games are your 8th game. Your end of the season rivalry are your 8th game. Dallas Marquez follows. Everybody follows. Okay. Here is the problem. Yes, our conference understands. Here is the problem. Here is the problem. You can't do it. You can't do a semifinal flex weekend by magically taking the top 4 teams of the conference and having those 4 teams automatically know if they're playing at home or on the road that last weekend of the season. It doesn't work. What if out of the top 4 teams, 3 of them have already played an extra home game? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Kyle Visser says some teams would lose a home game. Exactly. It doesn't work. It doesn't work except for one way. go for insight. If they're only playing 8 games, they play 4 home, 4 away. But everybody wants to keep their 7th home game. And you're going to have unbalanced, you're still going to have unbalanced home and away. This is how it works, ladies and gentlemen. And it's the only way that it works. You need, I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe I'm saying this. Hang with me here. The only way that this truly works is if you go into pods. It's the only way to schedule it to where every team knows it can schedule around its non-conference games. Some season, all 3 games are home games. Some season, 2 games are home, 1 is away. And then you have the 4 home, 5 away conference games. Just like now. It's the only way for every school in the conference to have 7 home games, 5 road. It's the only way in your conference where you as a fan, a student athlete, the athletic director, the coach, your local media, national media, you know if you're home and away on that 12th game, the 9th conference game, because it's determined by the pod that you are in. Period. If you have pod A, if you have pod B, if you have pod C, if you have pod D, you can have even years. Just an example. Even years, the winner of pod A and the winner of pod B, every team in pod A and every team in pod B are going to play a home game on the last week of the season. Pod C and pod D, on those even years, every one of those schools are going to play a road game on the last week of the season. They don't know where they're going, but they know it's a road game. And then you switch it back and forth. You rotate those pods. That's the only way you can schedule this. Now, let's turn another page. This isn't going to happen this year. Obviously, for none of the conferences. The chances of this getting implemented for 2025 for any of the conferences is pretty small. So now we're looking at 2026, which is, by the way, this could be a new structure, college football playoff expansion structure. Could go to 14 teams, whatever, 16 teams. So, keep that in mind. It ain't happening this year, and the chances of this being implemented in 2025 is very small. The chances of this being announced relatively soon within this college football season is pretty high. What year it's implemented, I would guess 2026 for some conferences. Now you say, look, Greg. Yeah, okay, pods. These conferences, a lot of these conferences, they don't want to go into pods. It's hard for competitive balance. It's hard to create competitive balance. It's your media partners don't want. It's better for the media partners if they don't go into pods. These athletic directors want their schools to play each other as much as possible in a 10-year span. All that is correct. But these conferences they need to, they're under pressure to create more revenue. This is a new revenue stream. It does not add a game. It does not add wear and tear. It adds more meaningful games in the conference race to get a bid to the semifinals of your conference. It adds value to the games. It adds value to the media partners. And it sounds like at least one media company, it sounds like they're willing to pay for it. Now, there's another problem, which what I've laid out. There's another problem. Not all these conferences can be divided into, not all these conferences can be divided into pods. True. True. But I would take you back. This isn't happening this year. It's not happening next year. Probably not happening in 2025. It's probably something that may happen in 2026. So if a conference digs into this and they want to do this pod and if it's worthwhile and if there's an ability for a conference to get to a certain number, let's say number 16 or let's say number 20, then the pods will work. And we're back to talking about pods once again. I'm going to take your phone calls. I will say this. It was just a couple months ago that somebody brought up pods or somebody brought up something. And I said, you know what? Maybe that will happen someday. But these conferences, man, all of these conferences are settled on what they have. This is what they wanted. Boy. These conferences are going to do whatever they can possibly do to bring in more revenue. And that means to bring more value to their media partners. And this is something that a media partner is willing to pay for because it locks in more meaningful games during the regular season, marketing and branding those semifinal games. And maybe, just maybe, one of these conferences puts their semifinal games on a different media platform than what their championship game gets played on. And maybe, just maybe, that media company that's going to do the semifinal games that doesn't have the rights to the championship game, maybe they're just willing to pay for it. And maybe your commissioner and your athletic directors, there's no way they can turn that down. There's no way they can turn down that extra revenue. It's not adding a game. It's not adding stress. It's not adding really travel. It's adding exposure. It's adding drama. It's adding more of a race to your conference. And it's not risking your conference champion because your conference champion, especially if you're in the Power 5, is most likely going to get to the playoffs because you're going to be one of the top 5 ranked teams. And your G5 conferences, This is going to create more and more drama and a little bit more money. If one of those are interested, I'm just saying. But this is all of FBS, conferences in FBS, and I can't get in any more details than that. Before I get to your phone calls, this is not speculation. I and every other channel and every other message board and every other college football account and X, we've all speculated. We've all talked about Jim Harbaugh, talked about it years ago. Mark Hollis, the former athletic director of Michigan State, talked about it. People have talked about it in public. We have speculated on it. Is there ever going to be a time where a conference doesn't not only hold a conference championship game, but they hold a semifinal? Well, we can say here at Peek Around the Corner, Friday, August 9th, while nothing is official at this point, it's way past speculation. It's way past phase 1, phase 2. It's deep in the weeds. It is deep in the weeds. I cannot promise you when there's going to be an announcement, a report on it officially from a conference or from an entity, a major college football reporter or media company or whatever. I cannot promise when that's going to happen. I would suggest it's going to happen within this college football season. Most definitely. And I don't know how many conferences do it. Maybe they all do it. Maybe only one does it. Maybe only 4 does it. Maybe only the power conferences do it. Maybe only the G5 conferences do it. But you got to have a number that can be pod related, which is 16 or 20 or 12 if you want to do 2 divisions and take the top 2 schools from each division. You can do 12, you can do 16, you can do 20, you can do 24. But it's almost impossible to do this without going into pods. Because you cannot structure the home and away. You cannot do it properly before the season begins. And that has to be known. So I'm going to open up the phone calls. We are way past. This is not speculation. I'm just warning you. Who does it? How exactly do they do it? How much money can it get brought in? What media companies would be willing to do this? What commissioners are willing to do this? I'm going to let you guys talk on it. I'm going to let you guys speculate on it. I'm not going to be able to answer much. There's a lot I do not know. There is some I do know, and I cannot hit upon it. This is far as I could take it tonight. But you're going to be hearing more about it eventually by the people behind the curtain, the chatter behind the curtain. They'll be letting you know. Let's get going here. Phone line is open. 763 260 1333. 763 260 1333. And let me add something here. Hold on.
Call from
Immaculate.
Thank you for calling, sir. I was hoping you would call. I want to say one more thing.
Go ahead.
The title of the show is Semifinals Flex Game is squarely on the table for FBS conferences. Squarely on the table. It is there. This is not, people are not in the room ruminating, theorizing, speculating, having a drink at the bar, thinking this is beyond that. It's beyond that. I would not be having a show tonight. I would not be telling you. If this was just speculation, you guys know, I would say let's open it up for speculation. I use my words carefully. Semifinals flex game is squarely on the table. It's sitting on the table, and it has been for a while. We've known this for about a month, but I was able to get to where we are tonight, to where I could push it all the way up until this line, and I can't go any further. Immaculate, the floor is yours, my friend. What do you think, sir?
Well, I appreciate you for bringing this. The fact that you're hearing something about this now is very telling. I know we've had multiple conversations about something like this.
Yeah.
And my first thoughts upon hearing this are, this is a good first conversation. And what it sounds to me like they're doing is saying, even if we don't get this new governance right away, if it's getting held up, because I am now, especially hearing this now, I am absolute believer that in that governance, there's going to be they will pass new divisional rules and new conference postseason rules. But we're seeing that being held up right now. So if they had these plans and they were going to do this, that might be held up. So now what you're bringing forward is a very interesting theory in terms of how they could do it without having those rules. Does that make sense? I mean, I know you can't say a whole lot, but instead of divisions, you're talking pods. Instead of an actual postseason, which they would need new rules for, they're talking about doing this during the season. So that's where I find this interesting, is that it kind of seems like a way to start talking about it, but doing so and not knowing exactly when this new governance is going to pass, which that makes me worry a little bit. That maybe that's really getting held up. That could be a little while, the whole House settlement. But in terms of what you're saying, pod numbers, yes. I remember we used to talk about 25-5 as just kind of like the crazy idea. But with pods, you can't do that. They won't be able to do that. They will have to have an even number.
Yeah.
Because they're using the old rules. But it's interesting though, because if you do this, are they not? If they're bringing this into the season, the scheduling sounds very difficult. Like, because you're still going to have to give all the other teams, they're going to still want their full season because they're selling tickets for those games.
All the schools will have their full. All schools would have under what I laid out.
Mm-hmm.
Every school would have 7 home games, 5 road games.
So every school is basically taking part in this.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No,
I left something unsaid. So
okay.
If you had, you've got 4 pods of like 4 teams. The pod winners go to the semifinals. Then your second place team would play another second place team in another pod. And the third place team would play another third place team in another pod. And a fourth place team would play. And before the season. So whatever pod you're in, that last conference game, you're either home or away. If you're playing at home. If for instance, if you're playing in Pod A, all those Pod A teams are on the road for the last game. Then those first 8 games, you're going to have at least 4 conference games at home. This will all be scheduled out like normal. And then depending on if you're going to have 4 home games conference games, then all 3 of your non-conference games are going to be at home, just like it is now. But if you're going to have 5 home conference games, then 2 of your non-conference games will be at home and 1 will be on the road, just like it is now. So nothing really changes, except you don't know who you're playing in the last week of the season, because that's semifinal weekend and that's flex weekend for your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place finishes in each of the pods. Hopefully that clears it up. Yep. But you know, I'm laying this out here knowing that I don't think anyone has all the details, but I'm just laying out how it could work. But I'm not promising that's exactly what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and this is probably still in like kind of early negotiations.
It's like more than early. I just don't have the information, or I can't say it. But this I can say I don't have the information. This is not early. We're not early in this. That is the big part of the story. That's why I had to come out here, because I don't know when this is going to pop. Yeah. But yeah.
And the reason what I mean by like early is this is not a new idea. This idea goes back. Well, your form how you're presenting it is, and it's interesting. I want to get into that, but this idea, you know, getting back to divisions pods, you know, it's fun rules, and extending the postseason. I mean, this was talked about before the CFP ever existed. They just got the rules for it. The NCAA always blocked it.
Yep. And now you have more of an incentive to gather more revenue, because you know you're paying off this. You're paying off this House versus NCAA, you know, and you got the salary cap. You got a lot of motivation on your commissioners wanting to grab that extra revenue stream, and you got a lot of motivation for the athletic directors to say yes. And so here we are. This is in discussion, deep in discussions.
Yeah, and my thought real quick on that, no, I actually want to talk about G5, but it really sounds to me like, I guess maybe I would say international soccer and FIFA, when they form you up into groups and you play in those groups. It's not the same because they're not doing the whole full round robin, but I mean, you kind of are, like within your pod. And it sounds like that's a little, like that's just going to be scheduled normal at the start, just like any other thing. But now it's, the last teams you play are very specific. It's like having in the NFL, if you were to play your division opponents in the last few weeks leading up to the playoffs, it's because they just mean more. You know, those, when you are at the end of the season, you play those games, the potential postseason lineup is much more, it's not clear, but it's much more clear. So now those divisional games, pod games, whatever we call them, at the end of the season, their value goes up to the networks. You can present which ones are the better matchups.
Mm-hmm.
And that value, I'm saying that value goes across all conferences. I mean, something like this actually gives the G5 something to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And people will say, well, what does that matter? Well, it matters because they're part of the agreements within the NCAA. They may not be plaintiffs on the House case, but they are on all the committees that are going to have to approve some of these things to happen. So at some point in time, they got to get something, right? And clearly they're going to want something that has money included because they're going to try their damnedest to keep up and at least stay in the picture. And something like this gives them that. But in my opinion, not as they are right now. You're probably going to see considerable consolidation. If this is true, and this is about ready to go, and we're about ready to hear about it, let's say whenever we hear about it, that's when you're going to start hearing a lot of talk about consolidation in the G5 because I just don't see how it benefits them all to remain the way they are now. I don't know if that makes sense, if I'm saying this right, but by having more of them all in a conference, you have a better chance of having a good lineup of them there at the end. Does that make sense to you, Greg?
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, it
So,
does. It does.
yeah,
Yep.
and probably can't go too far into that either, but that's what I would say to folks who are listening. And I know people have been wondering, like, what's going to go on at the G5. Watch for this now, because if they're finding a way right now to actually get ahead of governance, which is what this sounds like, I've been waiting to hear for this until after governance, that they were going to use the new governance system that basically gets put right on top of the autonomous conferences system that's already there, been there since 2014. They're going to use that at some point to pass these rules. But if this is coming sooner than those rules, if I was in the G5 room, I would start watching your schools. Start watching, listening, pay attention to guys on X that might be talking about certain things from those schools, because you can catch little bits. But that's where I'd say you might actually see some expansion before we even see the majors. Because for these guys, if you're talking about percentages of gain, this is through the roof. They're making a couple $1 million each, as it is right now in most of these schools. You do something like this, and they're going to have networks approaching them, most of them. And that's where having less than 5 G5 conferences probably helps, because I don't know if there's enough networks to go and work with all 5 of them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see a real large push to consolidate there, because there's only going to be so many TV deals to go around. And having more of those schools when they're kind of at a lower pace like that, it's a little bit easier to do, and it gives you higher odds of having one team that comes out of that could be good. So that's very intriguing to me, that when you're bringing this up, this fast forwards the situation beyond the need for governance. So not sure how much more really to go in on that. I know people are real excited about this. But yeah, I just say to folks who aren't believing you, I mean, this is pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah.
If this is really going on and they're working on this is the type of thing that people they think so negatively about realignment, because it just had a very negative connotation up to this point. This is one of those situations I've been looking forward to, because I think that turns that around. Right. This gets a lot more participation for a lot more schools.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any more going on that, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what people think about this. And I think the people who want to start getting this out there, you probably won't be the only one. You'll just be the first one.
I won't be the only one.
Yeah,
Nope.
This is probably what we wanted to go tonight. I'm guessing we might see someone this weekend with a little bit on X, a little article.
Yeah, I'm sick as a dog, and I made sure I came out here tonight. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, because I was like, we'll do it Saturday, I'm sure. And then I see you post them, like, oh my God, this must need to go out real quick.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I think this could be a fun week when we see this. And Monday, everyone's going to be talking about, just saying who's going where.
Yeah.
Which conferences are going to be ones that take from. Next week, it might go crazy, my friend. So I'm going to let you go. I want to hear what these folks have to say, and I really appreciate bringing this to us tonight.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Great call. Nick Boardman. Am I the only one that doesn't understand what this is for, except for money? Is it for conference bragging rights to help teams boost their resumes to make the playoffs? Great question. I'm glad you asked. Hold on.
Call from
CFB Plus.
CFB Plus. Can you hold on for a second?
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. I got a good question from Nick Boardman here. Excuse me. I'm my voice and everything. Nothing is quite working here. Let me I'm going to use an example. Now, and I didn't want to, I don't want to, blah, 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 blah. This tonight, I'm not talking specific conferences. All right? I'm not doing that. I can't do it, first of all. Excuse me. But I'm going to bring up I'm going to bring up the Big Ten, for example. And no, I'm not reporting that the Big Ten are in deep talks about this. First of all, they have 18 schools right now. They don't, but maybe they are in deep discussions, knowing that they're going to expand with 2 teams. I'm not reporting anything. I'm giving an example. Okay, ladies and gentlemen? Tony Petitti, you remember when he pushed the idea of the Big Ten having automatically 4 qualifiers to go into the playoffs, to qualify? The top 4 teams in the Big Ten automatically qualify. Remember all that? That, by the way, could still happen, probably won't. But in 2026 iteration of the playoffs, it probably ain't going to happen. But my point is, the reason why Tony Petitti was pushing that, he told you why he was pushing that. He wants more of his conference games to mean more about the conference race. And the reason why Tony Petitti was pushing that is because his media partners were pushing that. The media companies want these conference races to mean a whole lot. So, you already have your conference champion for the power conferences. You already have your conference champion pretty much almost automatically going to the playoffs. That wasn't how it was before. So now your conference championship games have more worth to them. But what if the media company is willing to pay more to make sure that more of those conference games in November mean more to the getting into the top 4? So then then 4 schools have a chance to win the conference championship, and then pretty much get an automatic bye to the playoffs. That you create more meaningful games. So if you're a conference that has 2 teams way out in front and everyone, still those other conference games mean a lot because the 3rd and 4th slot will get into the semifinal weekend. It creates more value to your media companies, to your media partners, if they're willing to pay. And I can tell you, tonight and Friday, August 9th, there is a belief that a media company or media companies are willing to pay for this arrangement, knowing that suddenly, out of nowhere, some of those conference games that they've already made a deal with these conferences, saying this is what we're going to pay for this, suddenly those games are going to be more valuable, and these media partners love that. Hopefully that somewhat answers the question, Virginia Tech Hokie Nick Boardman. Hopefully that answers it. CFB Plus, and no, I'm not reporting anything about the Big Ten or any other conference specifically tonight. CFB Plus, go ahead. The floor is yours.
All righty, thank you. And I'll take a stab at answering Nick's question. So to me personally, and this is just my guess, this has the Big 12 written all over it. Because Brett Yormark has said time and time again he's looking to explore new avenues of revenue creation. He has been vocal about being different. He's alluded to taking games or having Big 12 games on non-conventional days for more revenue or more exposure. And so And then another huge thing that I think helps the Big 12 in this situation is they don't have any major rivalries on that last weekend. And for me personally, I think that at the moment is probably a big hang-up for like the SEC, because you have the Egg Bowl, the Iron Bowl, you'll have the Texas A&M rivalry on that weekend, and that's going to be difficult to, I think, convince some of those members to give that up for a flex schedule or move that around. Now, if the money's there, then money talks.
Yeah.
To Nick's question, why would they do this? What is the gain for this? Well, for the Big 12 in particular, they're not guaranteed a whole lot of teams in the playoffs. They're only guaranteed one, and most years, or they'll be, I guess, I don't know if they'll average two, but extremely unlikely to get three or more. Now, if you do this, I think that helps teams get in if you're from the Big 12's perspective, because you're taking your top four teams, and so you're eliminating last week slip-ups to lower teams. You're giving them better chances to pad the resume, because if they're the top four in the conference, I'm going to assume that they have decent records. And so you can pad, your second place team, certainly your first place team, but that shouldn't be a concern, or your third or fourth place team.
Yeah.
And if those teams lose, it also kind of gives them the quote quality loss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, I don't know if you agree with that. This is all also just conjecture, hypotheticals.
That's fine.
So that would be why the Big 12 might do this, as well as the revenue, the exposure, and to me it has Big 12 written all over it, with Fox coming in as broadcasting those semifinal games. And if they were to release this, it's interesting, because now if you really want to put your tinfoil hat on, then this may affect realignment, because now numbers, if you do go to pods, gets interesting, because you have to get the right numbers for pods and how that works. So, and then you're also sending a signal to potential candidates what they can expect, and the potential revenue upswing and exposure upswing from this.
Yeah. Yep.
But
that's all I can say. Yep.
I know you can't say much, so I'm just kind of speaking what I think. I think some group of fives are gonna definitely do this, but I just think this has Big 12 written all over it, as they will be the pioneers for it. I could be wrong. I was wrong. I've been wrong in the past, but that's all I'm gonna say on that.
Okay. All right, man. I appreciate it. Great phone call, sir.
You get some rest. You get some rest and get to feeling better.
I will. I definitely will. But we had to do this tonight. So, all right, sir.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Call from
Big Ten brother.
Big Ten brother, can you hold on for just 1 second?
Sure.
And Nick Boardman, I see your comment says, so it's 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, all play to get the conference champion. It could end up being that way, but I think you're going to run into a whole lot of difficulties, because you cannot structure the home away balance on every school's schedule throughout your conference if you end up having a 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. It's more likely, but I could be wrong, guys, but it's more likely that if a conference, and we believe at least one conference, they're way deep in discussions. If they're going to do this, it's probably going to be in pods. If not, if they are going to just have one division, maybe somehow those semifinal games are neutral games, and you only go with 6 home games on your schedule sometimes. That's another possibility. Again, we don't quite know how it's going to look. It might look different from other conferences to other conferences. But the reality is this is deep in the weeds. This is dirt. This has been churning, and we're gonna learn. We're all gonna learn more about it here sooner rather than later. All right, brother, what's going on, sir? The floor is yours.
Hey, buddy, what's going on? You are talking about, I just caught the end, you are talking about the power conferences, correct?
I have not.
Okay,
I have, in my title of my show, I have said FBS conferences. That means...
Okay, that's right, FBS. Yeah, I got you. All right, here's what's going on.
All of them.
Here's what's going on. We'll use 16 for now, and the Big Ten would have to add 2 more if it's what I think that they're doing. What they're doing is, right now they have it set up where they have one auto bid. So each conference gets an auto bid right now that's guaranteed. But if you go a pod and you want to push the semifinal games, you're going to push them into the playoffs. So now how many teams do you have? You have the top team from each pod getting pushed into the playoffs instead of one auto bid. So now, let's say the SEC has 16 teams. Now they're going to want to push the winner of each pod into the playoffs, and then make that, instead of the one auto bid, Big Ten gets one, SEC gets one. Now you push those semis. Now you each get 4 into the playoffs. But what would you do with a conference championship? I don't know.
That may be, but I can assure you, that's not the story that we're breaking tonight. The story that we're breaking tonight is there is deep discussions way past speculation, way past phase 1, way past phase 2 in regards to a flex weekend, to a semifinal weekend, to where it leads to a conference championship game the following week, and then there is a conference champion determined by this setup. So that's what we're talking about. What you're talking about, you're free to speculate on it, no question about it.
Yeah, so you're still going to have it where it's only one auto bid, so that flex weekend is going to be outside the playoff, and they only still get one auto bid?
Yep. It's just what you're doing is you're not even adding a game. You're adding that 9th conference game is a flex game. So if you have a 16 team conference, or if you want to talk about the Big Ten, let's talk about the Big Ten. Again, I'm not reporting anything specifically on any conference. So I know people are going to be saying, oh, Greg Flugard. No, I'm not. But we're just pretending. Let's say the Big Ten expands with 2 schools from the ACC, whatever. They're up to 20 schools. They have 4 pods of 5 schools. Let's say my Minnesota Golden Gophers are in 5th place, dead last in my pod A. And in pod D, let's say Purdue's in dead last after 8 conference games. Well, and if it's all set up to where the 5th place pod A plays 5th place pod D, and then last week of the season, then my Gophers are going to play Purdue. And before the season starts, every school in each pod knows that last game is going to be a home or away game. And so there you have it. You got 5th playing 5th, 4th playing 4th, 3rd playing 3rd among the pods. But the top teams in the pods, the pod winners, go into a conference semifinal game. Semifinals.
I got that. See, what I thought, I'm thinking, well, what's the benefit unless they're going to the network and saying, well, instead of our conference champ automatically getting the playoffs, why don't we move the pod champions, push them into the playoffs so that we get, say there's 4 pods, so that we get 4 teams into the playoffs.
Well,
that's what I'm thinking.
This story isn't The story that we're breaking tonight isn't that. This story is not solely about the SEC potentially doing something, about the Big Ten potentially doing something. This is about all FBS conferences potentially getting to a certain point in where they have a semifinal flex weekend. And I will say this again. This is not speculation. This is something that's deep in the weeds for at least one conference of all the FBS conferences. And so, no, it isn't. This story isn't what you're explaining. But I get it. Maybe SEC wants to push that. Maybe the Big Ten wants to push that. But that's not what this story is. That's about
I get what you're saying now. It creates a lot more interest having all the pod champions play on the last weekend. It's not so much we want to push them into the playoffs to have that semifinal game. They just want to create interest. One plays one over here, one plays one over here, and one plays one over here.
Yeah,
just to make it more interesting.
And maybe there are pod races, that are close up all the way into the last week. And maybe they find a way to do this without using pods. Maybe you keep your 18-team conference, one division. And maybe the 1 through 4, maybe that last weekend game for everybody is a neutral site game.
Right. You'd have to be.
There are other ways to do it. The way I laid it out seems to be the most logical. But whatever.
Yeah, you know what? I see what you're saying now. It's still a regular season game.
Yes.
You're going to make it a regular season, the 12th game of the season, and then the winner of those semis will still be a conference championship, and the winner of that gets the auto bid. I was thinking that the conferences were trying to be slick and saying, hey, look, we got one playing one over here, one playing one over here. Why don't we just put them in the playoffs? Since we got 4 number 1 pod teams, we'll just push them into the playoffs. That way they get more spots. But they want to keep it the regular season, still have the conference champion, and still only take one auto bid. I got you.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you. Great call. Bye-bye. Great call. Greg, who cares whether you share the information or report it these days? You're all considered media.
Call from
Jamie Thornton.
Jamie Thornton, this is Arkansas Razorback. Can you hold for a moment, please?
Absolutely.
I don't know how to answer that question, AZ Buckeye 96, other than there's no way that I can go further with the story. I do not burn my bridges. I do not burn my sources. I am not going to give out I'm not able to give out any more information than I've give out. This is why I can keep harvesting the field over and over again. People trust me. I can go so far and no further. I mean, let's take it back to the hot bubble of action. If I would have said on April 28th, 2023, if I would have said, oh, by the way, on May 7th, Colorado's meeting with the Big 12 and Chicago, if I would have blown that whole thing up, fine. I would have had a story and people, oh, Greg had the details, whatever. But I would have never been able to get any other story since then. It's not how you do this. You have to protect your sources. You've got to protect them with everything. And you help people out, they help you out. And this is as far as I can go. I cannot get into any more specifics other than to say there are other people going to break it. I'm giving you the peek around the corner. That is where I fit in this is a small little college football YouTube channel, and it does kind of have an impact. but we take what we do very seriously. I'm not gonna step on anybody's toes. So then 2 months from now, I can help give you all the peek around the corner on the next story that I have no idea will exist 2 months from now. But college football, there's always going to be something next. And I want to put ourselves in position to be able to give you the next. So I am not going to go any further than I have tonight. I'm fortunate that I could go as far as I could tonight. Conferences are looking at this, some farther than others. Some are really extensive talks, real past early phases of this. So keep your head on a swivel, keep your ears and eyes wide open, and I don't know how it's exactly going to look like. Maybe the example I gave is not going to be correct for any of the conferences that do this. But a flex week, the last weekend being flex for a semifinal, that I can tell you is in deep. This very well could be a part of our college football lexicon. Really, we're at that point. It looks like. So buckle up, brace for impact. Mrs. Arkansas Razorback Jamie Thornton is on the line. The floor is yours.
Craig, there's nothing worse than coming back from vacation.
Yeah.
And you get that triple cheeseburger, right? The triple cheese on the burger, then you get sick.
Yeah, yes. Well, I didn't put cheese on the burger, but I am sick. So is my wife. She's sleeping. She made a wonderful dinner, by the way. But
God bless her, and I'm glad
yeah.
you guys had a great trip.
Yes.
So it's very interesting with all this because a little bit of a history lesson here. We know Immaculate talked about governance, and that played a very huge part in obviously having to work this in during the regular season. But there's also another part of this. If you remember back when the college football playoffs were being negotiated, right, the new round, and I called in and told you, or I don't know if I called in, I might have texted it to you, that the SEC and the Big Ten were going to try, they were going to 14 games because they were going to try to make those first two positions automatic first-round buys for their conference champions. And you said, oh, no way, there's no way. Then you came back on 2 days later, it got reported. They were trying to push that, right? And you're like, I'm taking the L on this. They're trying to do it. They're trying to make it happen. They were trying to do the auto bids. This is something that the SEC has been working on. They've been wanting to do this. And obviously talking to Immaculate and a few other people, the Big Ten, because why? If you look at those conference championship games, the ratings that those games get, I mean, Alabama, Georgia had almost 18 million viewers from that game alone last year. And so, you want to talk about making easy extra money when everybody needs it and you keep it all in-house. It's pretty simple to, you can do the math and try to figure out how you're gonna make some of that money up. And so it's just genius how this way you make it, like you said, you don't even have to worry about playing an extra postseason game. You make it into a regular season. Now, here's another thing to add. And I don't know yet, the SEC, there's all this talk. Are we going to expand? Are we going to go to a 9-game schedule in 2026? Right now, the SEC has a big problem. And they're still trying, and I think you reported this about the SEC and Big Ten working on this together. They're still trying to figure out tiebreakers because I don't know, with no divisions, no pods, no nothing right now, they don't even have a tiebreak scenario right now for this year coming up. If 3 teams ended up with the identical record, who goes to the SEC championship game? Well, if you're on an 8-game schedule and you're playing 7, and then it kind of makes it easy. It makes it a moot point with this as far as who you have to try to go pick and what tiebreaker scenario you're coming up with.
If the conferences go to pods, that's my example. Like go for insight in the comments section. I kind of believe this was the intent from the start, but going divisionless was the best way to transition during the growth phase. These athletic directors, these presidents, these media companies really wanted there to be no divisions. That's why it happened. maybe you can somehow install, I can't figure it out though, but maybe there's a way to install this semifinal weekend, this flex weekend, and having it be neutral games, and just sometimes you have one less home game on your schedule. And maybe they don't go into pods. Maybe they do this and they don't go into pods. I don't want to eliminate that possibility, right?
Right. Oh yeah, definitely.
I'm just thinking, geez, they really need to go into pods, but maybe they figure out some other way to do it. So I want to make that clear. Sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
And no. Yeah, you're fine, Greg. And on top of it, remember this. I mean, and I'm sure the Big Ten wants to do the same exact thing. The SEC has made it clear, no matter what kind of scheduling format they go to, and there's already been a lot of backlash over this year not having divisions from the fans, people talking about that because they, tiebreaker situation even going into play, and we're about to start the season. Rivalries, obviously in the SEC, are a huge deal, right? And no matter what situation happens, they want to make sure that they can keep. They would love to keep them all intact, but you want to keep as many intact as you possibly can. So that's another way that you can almost do that, because that's even the pod, this kind of pod situation where they were talking about, where they pick the rivals for each school and they can put them in that pod. I mean, obviously the SEC doesn't really have to worry about geography as much as, say, the Big Ten, because they're all within a footprint area. But they can kind of keep those games together if they wanted to by doing that. But it's interesting. It's fascinating how they're trying to get around this to make sure they have that extra game, because it makes a lot of money. And whether it's the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, I'm sure they'll all do it. And like you said, how badly does the Big Ten want to expand? Do they want to expand by 2? Because they know if they go to a pod system, the only way that works is you have to have 16, you have to have 20, you have to have 24. Yeah. They're sitting there at 18 right now. So I don't know, but I mean, obviously, if they want to do the pod system, it's probably well worth it for them to expand. I mean, that could be another reason on the holdup of everything, is they're trying to get this kind of stuff, this kind of situation worked out. So, a great show, Greg, and I hope you take care, and I hope you and the little general get to feeling better.
Yeah, appreciate it, Jamie. Thank you very much. Great call.
Yeah.
Holy smokes, Anthony Carlson. Big super chat. Holy moly. So basically, we may potentially see conferences having a 14 playoff for the conference championship. I would take the L, no problem, if I'm wrong. First of all,
Call from
James.
Can you hold on a second? I didn't get your name, by the way.
James.
Okay, just hold on 1 second. Anthony Carlson, first of all, thank you for your incredible generosity once again to this channel, helping us keep the lights on, doing the second live show for the night. I really do thank you for that super chat, for your generosity. You're not going to be taking the L. I don't believe you're going to be taking the L, because that's basically what I'm reporting this evening. And I would not be saying this if I didn't think it was going to be true. What we are seeing, what we believe to be seeing, is at least a conference, probably more. It's conferences are deep in discussions about a 14 playoff. And how that exactly looks, I don't know. I've laid out something. Maybe you don't have to go into pods, but if you don't go into pods, then that flex weekend gets it's difficult to schedule it. Home and away. Maybe it's neutral games. I don't know how you do it without pods, but maybe you do it without pods. Whatever it looks like, a 14 playoff we are heading in that direction. As far as I know, nothing is official, but when it happens, other people are going to break it, and I'm going to go for the ride. In the PATC community, you're all going to know, you know, you've been given that peak, and I would buckle up because this is not speculation. And I have to stay vague tonight. So I do appreciate Anthony Carlson, the super chat, even though I'm being vague, but it has to be done. Thank you so very much. Caller, go ahead. The floor is yours.
My thing is with the pods that you're talking about, I could see if they want to keep rivalry, I can't talk, weekend,
Yep.
you can do 8 teams. You get 7 games out of the 8 teams. Then you do week 11 is your rivalry week, so you get that 8th game, and then you get your 9th game through the championship.
Exactly.
So if they really want that, that would be the true way of doing it.
Yes. Your traditional rivalry game, although rivalry games can occur anytime during the season, we're seeing more and more of that, but that traditional last game of the season rivalry game would not be the 9th conference game. It would be your 8th conference game. And then the 9th is your flex weekend. Correct, sir.
Yep. And then you just make sure the rivalries are in different pods. And you pretty much have it.
Yeah.
All right, that was it.
Or there's no pods, and somehow they do this in a way that that my little mind cannot comprehend, and that probably is the case. I have talked. Nobody can give me an answer how this would work without pods.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean there's not an answer. Maybe there is, and maybe it has to do with neutral games, and people still make the same amount of money, and they split the tickets, and I don't know. And the conferences may do it differently than each other. But I do know there does seem to be a market for it to happen, a motivation for it to happen, willing partners for it to happen in at least one or more conferences.
Yep.
All right, sir. Appreciate the call, man.
Thank you.
Call from
Larry the GM.
Larry the GM. How you doing, sir?
I'm great, Greg. Thank you so much for calling this my conference.
Yes. Well, I had to use somebody, so I figured, why don't I use Larry the GM? Why don't I put him out there under the spotlight and have the spotlight shine on him and see him melt before our very eyes? So I had to use somebody, sir. Go ahead.
I was honored, Greg, and this has been and it's pretty fitting because I've been thinking about these kinds of structures and playoff formats and division and conference structures and how you could put it together and how you could put semifinals together. Greg, I love this idea. Mm-hmm. I have one adder to you, and I don't think you're going to be able to comment on it, but let me give something else to kind of blow the minds of your listeners tonight. So what if we had a 20-team conference and we had 2 divisions within the conference? And go with me for just a minute, Greg.
Yep.
And you know how like Florida State and Clemson, in this imaginary world, let's apply this to the ACC. Okay. Florida State and Clemson, they talked Notre Dame to come in as a full member of the ACC because Notre Dame realizes they can't stay an independent forever, and they ascend to an A-level division within the conference. So essentially, you have two sub-conferences of 10 teams, okay? And you split those into the two pods. One of Pod A plays Pod B, second place, the semifinals, right? Then you cross them up, and then the next week they're playing the conference championship game. The fourth and fifth place teams in those pods play each other, and they're playing the loser of those games is playing the next week, Greg. Or you can call the 4 versus 5 game the relegation game. And the loser of those games drops into the second division. Now, it's all within one conference, Greg, and therefore it's not like anybody's being kicked out of the conference. There may be a structure where financially those in the top division are getting, let's say, 125% of the media rights, and the bottom division is getting 75% of the media rights. Therefore, you give a structure that gives the Clemsons and Florida State a bigger piece of the pie, because frankly, they deserve it if they're in the upper division. And it also would build competitiveness for all teams to try to strive to be in the upper division. And that way, you build into this ninth conference game. Not only are you building meaning for the very top of the conference, but you're building it into the bottom of that upper tier, and the top of the bottom tier. They're playing a promotion game to get into the upper tier, and so you now just like quadruple the number of important games in this ninth conference game week. Did you follow that, Greg?
Yeah, I follow it. I don't think it's going to happen, but look, it would provide more interest for those lower games, no question about it. Motivation, all that stuff. I just don't see the schools. I don't see enough schools agreeing to do it. I don't see it happening. But I understand.
That's why the ACC.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. That's why the ACC is the perfect model for this, because I think they're getting those that would balk are going to be like, okay, well, if you don't like this, you're really going to hate the world where we all leave. So I think that's why I say the ACC is the perfect. You bring in 3 schools, Notre Dame being one of them. I could conjecture that you could bring in Oregon State and Washington State to the ACC, and then you've got a 20-team conference, and you build it out just like I just said. Mm-hmm. All right, but that's my idea, Greg.
You got it. Interesting.
How to build it out.
I know a lot of people agree with you, by the way, with that type of stuff. So, all right, man.
But thank you so much, Greg. This is a fascinating conversation and can lead to a whole bunch more conference discussions that I think will be far more constructive than kind of the stuff we've been dealing with in realignment. So,
got it.
Cool.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Great call.
Call from
Nitwit.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the name.
Nitwit.
Nitwit. I'm sorry, Nitwit. Can you hold on for a moment here?
Sure.
I appreciate it. Grant Creech, Arizona. Hey, Greg, any word on a possible scheduling alliance between the Pac-2 and the Big 12? I don't know anything about it. You're not the first person who asked me about it on this show. I don't know anything about it. I don't believe the Big 12 has interest in a scheduled alliance. If I'm wrong, somebody tell me in the chat if I've missed something. I don't know anything about that. But I know you're not the only person who's asked me that. So is there something in the water out there? Mahivers, I don't know how to say that guy's name. Mahiver 3 stuff. I don't follow him. I don't know. I guess some of the stuff I get is from him. Some stuff I get, I wonder where it's coming from, and sometimes it's probably him. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it. I don't think the Big 12 is interested in that. There was another comment here. Hold on. But I appreciate the super chat. I appreciate the generosity. Grant Creech. I'm sorry I don't have a good answer for you. I just have not heard of any of that happening. There was a comment here. Now I can't find it, and of course I can't remember what it was. And I don't know what it was. Anyways, okay, Nitwit, go ahead, sir. The floor is yours.
Hey, Greg, I just wanted to call in, ask the question about, so right now the ACC has an 8-team conference schedule, right? So they would flex the 9th game to create this conference playoff week, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right now they have 8 conference games, and the flex.
So you wouldn't know who you were playing week 9. It would,
yes,
right?
In theory, yes, yep.
Okay, so that would solve their 9 conference games.
Well, it's okay. So, I see where could
I'm trying to infer, is this a big conference initiative, or is this the smaller conferences trying to get innovative?
I would generally describe it as all of FBS.
Okay,
That's the best I can do. But
now,
if you look, go ahead.
So if the conference, so it won't be tied to it wouldn't be an extension of what's already set in the current playoff system?
Not that I don't believe so. I don't believe it's an added game. Now, could I end up being wrong on that? Yeah, but I don't think it's an added game. Not an extension, just an internal, in a conference internal change in how they decide their conference champion.
Okay, so if it's cross, I'm sorry for all the questions, Greg.
No, go ahead. That's what we're here for. Yep.
If it's a cross FBS.
No, not necessarily. No.
Okay.
No, this might happen. This might only happen in one conference. I don't believe that's going to be the case.
Would it be covered by their current
6 conferences? It might happen in 3 conferences. It might happen in 2 conferences. Go ahead, sir.
So here's the rabbit holes you go down. Is it covered under their current media contracts, or would this be something different?
This would be an add-on, right?
Okay.
A media partner would be willing to pay more.
Okay.
But they're not adding a game. They're just willing to pay more for a couple of games because they're going to, market them different. It's part of it's the semifinal.
You could have championship week or ACC tournament week or whatever.
It's wild card weekend. It's top 4, final 4 weekend. It's whatever you want to call it.
Right. And that's where I'm kind of heading to this, because some of these conferences can be innovative, right? This is basically innovation.
Yep.
Well, I could see it happening in the Big 12. and it's a potential get you more revenue from what you have to have your media partners. Hey, we're going to create this wild card weekend, and we're going to play it up and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's a great idea. I'm going to piggyback on the other caller. I think if you are relegated down to these other conferences that don't make a lot of money, I think you could do a couple things. I know we haven't talked about this, but I think you talked about like Jim Phillips versus the Big 12 and how they could kind of get around some of this stuff. And I also think about this stuff, instead of having bowl week, maybe you start the season out. And you remember we used to have the kickoff classic. I remember Penn State played in Giant Stadium. Like maybe you create kickoff classic games for everyone in your conference. They get to keep the revenue from that. The Big 12 could play in Mexico. You already have FSU going to Georgia Tech, going to Ireland. There's a lot of different things you can do as a conference to kind of increase your revenue under the current model. And I think you can also, the revenue you make off of your wild card weekend and championship weekend, maybe those teams get to keep the money that you get off that revenue. So I think it's something down the road. It's good to see things being innovative and people coming up with different ideas, and I'd be all for that. It'd be great to see Penn State and Notre Dame play in Giant Stadium in a kickoff classic. And you know what? Schools who play in that game, you get to keep the revenue. That would be great. You know what I mean? So maybe a conference does that, like the ACC gets a game like that to start the year for all their teams. And there's some teams playing in Ireland. There's teams playing at a neutral site, maybe in the Meadowlands or somewhere, or Chicago Stadium, or however you want to do it. I think that would be great for college football and pretty exciting. So I'll hang up and listen to what you say, Greg. Thanks.
Got it. Appreciate the phone call. Great call. Again, if let's say they work this out where it's still only one division, where they don't go in pods.
Call from
Ryan Thomas.
Ryan Thomas, can you hold on for a moment?
As always.
Appreciate it. Sorry about that. Let's say we still don't go into pods. Let's say they figure out, flex weekend. It's whatever. I don't know how they're going to do it, but let's just say they figure out how to do it, and it's not going into pods. Well, you have a sixth place team of a conference. Let's say there's 17 teams in the conference, or 15. Don't have to be an even number, whatever. And you're the sixth place team, and you're one game behind that fourth place team, and you play that fourth place team the last game of the season before its semifinal weekend. And suddenly you've created, and there's a couple more games that could decide who gets that fourth spot. Suddenly you create more value for those regular season games. There is a willingness from media partners, or one or two or three or four. I can tell you for sure there's at least one out there that is willing to pay for this they perceive this added value to the conference regular season. And they pay out this extra value to the conference by using the semifinal weekend and a big payout to the conference where the teams split it up. So again, I don't want to get too, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds about the pods. I just happen to think that's about the best way to do it. But maybe they can find a way to do it without the pods. But again, essentially, you're not adding a game. This what's been told to me, this is not about adding a game. It's about you don't add a game. The championship game is your 13th game. 2 teams will play in the championship game, and both those 2 teams are going to be playing their 13th game, and then they go to the playoffs. You're not adding more grind to the student athletes. That's not what this is about. It's still adding value to the conference, to the media partners, and the conference gets more money, the schools gets more money. Ryan Thomas, the floor is yours.
Well, I think I want to make a point here.
Yep.
I think folks are getting a little too worked up in the logistics of this.
Yeah, and it's probably my fault because I got a little too worked up in the logistics.
No, because in reality, Greg, the fact that this is happening is great news, but the fact that this is happening, and it's even been talked about it, means that I think that the conferences are thinking about it aren't too concerned about how they're going to do it, but they're committed to doing it. I think, however they make it work will work.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important part.
I think you brought it. I think you said it in a lot better way than I have said it and could have said it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's the thing. The commitment's there, and I said the adage before, but blessed are the flexible, for they shall not get bent out of shape. I think overall. Oh, you okay, Greg?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I don't want you dying on air, Greg.
Well, I might, but it ain't because of something you said. So go ahead.
Well, it could be, but I think that right now you see that, and you look what Yormark did with some of the Big 12 rivalries. He moved them to different. He staggered them throughout the season to help increase the visibility of those. I certainly don't think that the classic traditional rivalry games like Bama, Auburn, or Ohio State, Michigan are going to, they might move to a week before Thanksgiving, or they might, who knows how they work that out. The bowls may be going away. I don't think that really matters. Like I said, the logistics are not so important as the commitment. And, obviously, if you look what Yormark's trying to do, being flexible, and you've heard him talk about different days of the week, and you talked about this previously about playing on non-traditional days of the week to increase value. The schools that are going to be, the conferences that are going to be flexible are going to be the ones that are going to make money. And I certainly think that there will be some pushback. There will be some. There always is, but I think that Yormark's taking this approach that if early on, if there's pushback, by the SEC and Big Ten, if he can fill those gaps, he's creating value for his conference. And I think very well what was probably told to him is, Yormark, you got till 2031. If you can make these TV slots at these different times where we need content filled, if you can bring higher ratings and help us collect more ad buy revenue, essentially, if you can make it more valuable, you'll get paid for it later on the next deal. And that's exactly what it is. And I think, this is the time period right now that you need commissioners that are savvy, that are in schools and programs that are flexible, because, the ones that Ohio State and Michigan don't have to be flexible. Alabama doesn't have to be flexible. I mean, they kind of already own those those rivalry weekend slots, Greg. But I certainly think that everyone's going to be doing. It's more than just the great gold rush. This is of the playoffs, the Gold Rush is essentially doing anything that can be done to maximize the value of your TV property inventory. So I think that's exactly what we're seeing. And, the more certain conferences stay wrapped up in petty squabbles with each other, the more opportunities they're going to miss. And I think that's just the reality of it. And I think it's exciting. I think Immaculate, again, he's not on something, folks. He's on to something. I think, he'd called this before, and it's exciting. So I look forward to seeing it happen. I think having that kind of mystery that last week after Thanksgiving that could be surrounded with a whole bunch of different games that could be played Thursday through Saturday that have implications for the following week's championship game and overall CFP implications. I think that's just great for the sport. It's great for the fans. Gives us something to watch. People will be at home or not shopping, or people will be shopping. I don't like shopping that weekend, but there'll be plenty of people that will have their eyes on the TV, and I think it's a great business idea, and I think it'll be great for the sport, and I'm excited for it. But anyway,
All right.
Get better, Greg. Take care, and have a great night.
Appreciate it. Let's recap. Let's do a recap. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and have your notifications turned on. This is our second live show of the evening. Probably not going to do a third one. But I could come on tomorrow morning. You don't know when I'm going to come on next. So you have to have your notifications turned on. Subscribe to the channel. Have your notifications turned on. And please, if you can, smash the like button if you've enjoyed our content today. First of all, there is a lot that I do not know on this story. There is some things that I know that I can't talk about. I have not discussed, nor will I discuss specific conferences in where they are with this idea. Not going to do it. There are conferences that are in deep discussions internally about this with their media partner or partners about having a flex weekend, a semifinal weekend, a Final Four weekend. How it looks, how it can be done, I speculated on that tonight. I'm probably missing something. It could look different from conference to conference. I think conferences are going to have complete deregulation. They're going to be able to decide their conference champion in the way they want to do it. And that goes to the governance part of this. It sounds like there's a willingness for media partners or partners to pay for this. It's worth it for the conference to do it. The media partner or partners believe they're getting value added. And the conference is going to make more money, and conferences are looking for more revenue. That's the biggest part of this story tonight. The other part that I just went over a little bit earlier tonight, and I gotta be real vague about this. But it's the other part of this August 9th live show. And I strongly believe you'll look back at our August 9th show and say, wow, pretty good. But the other part of this is there is a conference and conferences that are looking at a new revenue stream or a new revenue stream of adding value to their media partners by having conference games in non-historical spots on the college football calendar. And I can't say anything more than that. But maybe somebody else will. Maybe a reporter will. Maybe a college football YouTube channel will. A different one. A good one. This one can't, and it won't. But that's another part of this. College football conference or conferences are going to be pushing the envelope on putting their conference games on days that you would not, a certain time spot, certain parts of the calendar year from August to last week in November. There's parts in there that college football have not used, and it looks like those spots are going to be used. And how wild does it get? I don't know, but I think you're going to see something different. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, you college football sickos that are part of the college football PATC community, there's going to be a few more days in the calendar year that historically you would not have woken up and watched college football on. But that's going to change. You're going to watch college football on certain days that you've never done before. Or at least I don't remember. Maybe, but no, not really. So that's another part of this story live show, August 9th. Conferences are looking for new revenue streams. This story is not about private equity. This story, although that might happen, that's not what this story is about. This story is not about conference naming rights, although that might happen. But that's not what this story is about. This story is not about conferences making a sponsorship deal with a sportsbook conglomeration. That might happen, but that's not what this story is about. This story is about creating new revenue streams through creating more value for your media partner or partners and putting games on the calendar that has not traditionally happened. And the biggest part of this story, creating a flex weekend on the last weekend of the season and having a semifinal to determine your conference champion, be it with pods or not a pod, not pods, whatever, however you do it. That is the big story for tonight. And I'll leave you with this. This is real. Not speculation. I can't promise you a rose garden. I don't know when this is going to be announced. I don't know when it becomes official in this conference or conferences. But I know that the talk, that the deep discussions, it's all real. It's all real. It's all real. And whatever happens, you're going to hear about it. You will hear about it. But hopefully we provided you a peek around the corner here at College Football's Peek Around the Corner. I want to thank the incredible donation of Anthony Carlson and Mr. Arizona Guy. Thank you for supporting our channel. Without that support, we can't do this every night. I want to thank the great comments in the comments section and the wonderful phone calls. Buckle up, brace for impact. Who knows what happens tomorrow? Who knows? Now, I've been working on some stories. You guys thought I was on vacation. You thought I was on vacation, but you thought I was doing nothing. But I was working it. The Louisville thing, third-party talks with the Big 12, that is real. This is real. conference or conferences discussing this possibility. Not the possibility. They're way down the road on this. All this is real. History will be kind to us here at College Football Peek Around the Corner. And maybe, just maybe, we're working on other stories that I haven't been able to, I don't have the green light on. I just don't have it to where I can present it to you. So, who knows? So, buckle up, brace for impact, keep your head on a swivel, subscribe to our channel, and have those notifications turned on. Until next time, from all of us at College Football's PATC, to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.